evening, good evening, good evening. I just wanted to come on here and see if we're going to have anybody joining us. It is 8 p.m. in the PNW. And for those of you that were wondering, I'm in an area of Washington that's right near the Canadian border, so we're not receiving all of the bad weather that everybody else is getting in the PNW. So I hope everybody, hey Jennifer, I hope everyone is staying safe out there in the Pacific Northwest bomb cyclone, whatever it is, and I hope everybody's doing well. So hey Jen, hey, how do I look at and see the chat? Well, it just popped up, right? When you popped up and said, hey. Anyway, so how are you doing? I watched your short today. I don't know if you did that after or before, that you saw me or whatever, but it was just so I know, see him? He's right there. His named Lancelot. I think he was crossbred with a raccoon because of his markings and everything. We call him Stink, and he's huge. Anyway, that's my cat, and then my little person has her cat. Did it right before you did yours. I see. We are like two peas in the pod. We get the same messages. Julia, welcome to the chat. I'm gonna just be shooting the shit for a little bit, while everybody gets an opportunity to come in. So, but yeah, so I saw your comment, Jen, and then I went right over to your channel and I was like, because I always check to see what new videos that you have up because 9 times out of 10, we're receiving the same messages and doing here I am prepping, doing the same topics. We're getting, so we're on the same wavelength. And I'm so glad that you said, hey, can we be BFFs? Because we're both saying the same thing. Yeah. So you're in North Carolina, right, Jen? So how do I bring up the chat so I can see it except for, oh, I think that's it. Let's see. Chat viewing options, top chat, live chat, all messages are visible. Okay. Okay, there we go. I got everything. So right, that first video I saw of yours was like speaking to me. I know. And then the first video I saw of yours, you were speaking to me. It was so crazy. But yeah, I was like, I popped over and watched your video, and you were like, yeah, I live in the house with my three sons and their partners. And I was like, oh my word. But then I think, I'm only looking at it from my point of view, and stuff like that, because, my little person's driving me nuts. And so, but anyway, I'm sure you got a loving family because look at their mom, So I'm sure they all pitch in and help you and everything else. So that's good. And, that they're helping you out and everything else. So, we're going to give it to like 5 minutes. Is that okay with you guys to make sure and see if anybody else pops in? And then we can get right into it, right? Yeah. They're driving me nuts. Julia, right? Sure. Okay, okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. So, what did you guys think about? Did you get a chance to watch the video today? I was just so, because I was watching Straight Talk, or the one that I put her on my YouTube recommendation channel list anyway. And so I was watching her the other day, and then she was giving an update on her video, and then someone said in her comments, oh well, she's fat or whatever. I was like, oh hell no, you don't. What is wrong with people's manners? You don't go this, but you know what? It just goes along to listen. I mean, along with what I said earlier today, it's like people have been downgrading women and talking about women and insulting them. Yeah, low frequency people, NPCs, like I said. And So they're just used to just spewing out whatever they want to in the comments because they're hiding behind the, you know, uh, being a happy single. Did you just release that one? I've been binge watching you. So like at night after I've done everything I got to do and I'm watching everything, then I watch you, Elle, and then the other lady channels that I'm supporting and stuff like that. Did a whole video critiquing me and making. Oh, send me the link because you know I'm all about protecting us. So I'll go over there and put something in his comments. So was he being negative or what? Oh God, that's horrible. I know, right, Julia? That's disgusting. The thumbnail says I'll never marry again. That was his thumbnail on his video, and did it have your picture on it? And that's what he said? Oh, we're at 6 minutes. All right. So for those of you who all came, thank you all 5 of you for coming in. I appreciate it. I love you. Thank you so much. And for those of you that are new here, hello. My name is Monica, and I am going to be talking this evening about how I wound up working in a cemetery funeral home. Okay. So I was living in Richmond, Virginia at the time, and I had traveled there. It was the first time that I had moved away from California. I had had it, and I said I wasn't going to live the rest of my life having not gone anywhere and seen what it was like to live somewhere else. So, long story short, wound up in Richmond, Virginia, and I was working for a cell phone company, and then that job phased out, and then my roommate's boyfriend was working at a bank and his job phased out too. So in Richmond, Virginia, you have to apply for 3 jobs a week or whatever. So he and I, we would get together and I know, Jen. So he and I would get together and then we'd go through the newspaper and decide where we were going to go and apply to and everything. And then I found an ad in the local paper and it said, if you're good with people and you really care about people, we've got a position for you, da 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 da. And then the employer said it was Forest Lawn Cemetery. So my roommate's boyfriend at the time was like, cemetery, really? He was like, I don't like the cemeteries. There's no way. And so I was like, come on, we're just going to do it so we can put it on the paper, you know? And I said, we'll go in, we'll do the interview. At least we'll find out what it's about. We'll get some practice and, getting back into interviewing and whatnot or whatever. We'll go together since you're afraid to go to the cemetery and we'll go together and I'll be with you. I said, because I'm not scared of the cemetery, whatever, whatever. So anyway, so we called, scheduled our interviews, both of us on the same day. He would go first or I would go first, and then, we would be done. Well, we get there and come to find out they interviewed both of us at the same time. So they brought us in, they showed us around, and then they sat us down, and then they started, doing the regular interview questions and whatnot and things like that, and then gave us an opportunity to ask questions too. So, as it turns out, the job is called At Need Pre Planning Services for Families. Okay. And you're called a family service counselor in your position. And so, what the job was going to entail, excuse me, is coming into the office in the morning, meeting with the marketing director, and uh, getting an outline of different things and topics on how to discuss pre planning for your final arrangements, right? So I'm so open and I'm so, I don't, that doesn't phase me. I've done ghost busting. I hear dead people. You know, I'm empathic. So I think those things prepared me for, this job and everything. And that's why I had no fear about it or whatnot. But I was like, oh, yeah, of course. people want to go to take care of that because, that's important. And you don't want to, be having your family members have to do anything on the worst day of their lives and everything else. And so, anyway, so I was open. I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to be great. Everybody wants to do this and plan and whatever. Well, that's because I'm thinking about it from my point of view, right? And so then anyway, so we got in, we got the training, we got everything, how to fill out the paperwork, got our licenses for selling life final arrangement insurance. And just to let you know, life insurance is for the living that you leave behind, and burial or cremation insurance is for your actual service and making sure of everything, right? So anyway, so the cemetery was beautiful. And we didn't have to stay there in the office because they wanted you out in the field, making appointments and getting people. And I'm brand new to Richmond, Virginia, so I have no network. But my roommate's boyfriend at the time, he had been in Virginia forever, so he had a network. So we were able to make appointments and, help each other and whatnot with our, presenting the information to the families and whatnot and so forth. So he loved that part, but he hated going in the morning to report, because as soon as we went through the gates, he started feeling all kind of whacked out or whatever. And I was like, it's calm. It's okay. They're not going to bother you, you know. And as I'm going in, I'm like, good morning, everyone. How are you? I love you. Thank you so much for allowing me to come in and help other family members, so that they don't have to have a bad experience on the worst day of their lives and, so forth and so on. So I loved it. And so he grew to love it too because I got a job offer to go to Texas to work for an auctioneer company that does auctions for going out of business sales and things like that. That's another story. So anyway, so I wound up going to Texas and I left. But the funny thing is about it is my roommate's boyfriend wound up staying at the cemetery, not only staying at the cemetery, but growing up in management to where he was managing the cemetery. Um, until he retired from that. So we still laugh about that this day, because we were like, let's go fill out this form and get it on our paperwork for unemployment, and then and then we both walked out and we were like, we got the job. What are we gonna do? We didn't plan on this, but we had fun. Um, we had to learn the cemetery and things like that, and they had little golf carts for us to go out. So whenever they said that it was time for us to go out and start memorizing the different areas of the gardens is what they call it, and different things like that. So I was like, okay, no problem. Da, da, da. I'd jump in the golf cart and I'd go around the cemetery and I would learn, what each garden area number was and where it was located and things like that, so we can help families when they make appointments to come in and select their final resting place, or cremation and things like that. So I learned so much history, about monuments and markers and different traditions on different cultures and how they perform their ceremonies for their loved ones once they have crossed over and things like that. So it was a very educational experience for me. And I know what you guys are all saying. So did you have any experiences with ghosts or anything like that? So it's very funny, but because I'm an empath and I would go out, I never saw any ghosts or anything like that, but I would go as I was studying the gardens and things like that. And it's so peaceful. And so I would go around and look at markers and things like that. So I would read their information. And then I would just start up a conversation. I would be like, hey, Mr. Jones, you know, I don't mean you any disrespect. I just wanted to let you know I'm new here at the cemetery. I'm going to be working here. So you're probably going to see me around. All I ask is that you guys don't scare the shit out of me, because I don't have any problem with you. And I'm not here to cause harm or stir up the spirits of, those that are resting and things like that. So I never saw anything, but I did hear a lot of stuff while I was there and whatnot. I also learned about the Buffalo Soldier. One of the last Buffalo Soldiers was buried in the Forest Lawn Cemetery, and I never knew what a Buffalo Soldier was. So, for those of you who don't know, these were a group of melanated servicemen that served for our countries and things like that, and they called them the Buffalo Soldiers. I don't remember all the details now, because it was years ago and things like that. But I learned about in the Jewish area of the cemetery on why they leave the rocks up on top of the monuments and things, and then on the markers. I learned about the burial process. I learned about the cremation process. There was actually a crematorium right on the property. Um, I learned all sorts of things, and I also learned about how commercialized it is now that corporations are buying up a lot of the mom and pop funeral homes and cemeteries. Yeah, lots of history. That's what I loved about Virginia because I could feel the history. Being an empath, I could feel the history. And it was like when I went and walked through the cemetery and things like that, it was like I could have little bits of flashes and stuff like that for like different times in life and different things like that. And, I would go out into the cemetery and meditate and things like that and just talk to the people, make sure that none of their floral arrangements had fallen off of the monuments. I'd always make sure that everything was, you know, not disturbed. If it was disturbed, I would put it back together. Flower vases were turned up, making sure that they're correct and just giving dignity to the decedents in the park, right? So I learned about a lot of different cultures in their burial, you know, rituals and ceremonies and things like that. So I learned so much. But the one thing that I learned is that people don't want to talk about going. They don't want to talk about. I thought I would have appointments up the wazoo. Oh yeah, I wrote up. This person's taken care of. This person's taken care of because that was my passion and mission was to make sure that people were finally taken care of, so that you know they wouldn't have to experience having to make financial decisions on the worst day of their lives, right? But that wasn't the case. People don't want to talk about that. So, anyway, so needless to say, I learned a whole lot. There was a woman that was there, and she was in her 60s at the time whenever I worked there. And she said, "Honey, I used to be in banking, but if I had learned about this at your age," she goes, "I would have jumped into it a long time ago." She said, I love my job. I love helping people. So that encouraged me, to be like, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to save them as much grief and sorrow, you know, and make it as easy as possible for them, so that they can go through their mourning process and things like that. So, and we're the only culture that doesn't talk about it. Everybody is so taboo about talking about your final arrangements and death. You may as well ask them to show them your bank account or something like that. You would have thought that they just, you just said, "Hey, you're going to die tomorrow, so let's talk about it." you know, but it helped me learn about the final process and things like that. And so, pre-planning ahead of time, you can make payments. If you have an at-need situation, which was the second position that I had at another funeral home and cemetery after I left Richmond, but pre-planning, you're able to make payments over time and things like that, right? But if you have an at-need service to where you have a loved one that's crossed over or anything like that, and you have no arrangements before anything can happen for the ceremony or things like that, you have to pay in full. And so I'm going to get back to that because that's part of the reason why I'm not in the funeral home cemetery business. Okay, so I leave Georgia. Excuse me, I leave Richmond. I go to Texas, and I get another job with a auctioneer and everything else like that. Right. So fast forward, I'm in Georgia, and this was in 2018, I think, right before that lockdown vacation they gave us for 4 years. So anyway, so I arrived in Georgia and I wasn't able to get a job. And it's like, oh, well, I know a place that'll hire you right after you interview, right? So anyway, so I called down to Georgia Memorial, who is a dignity provider. Dignity is the corporation that owns the cemetery and funeral home, right? So I called, talked to the manager down there, said, hey, I've got experience. However, I don't want to be pre need. I would like to work with families at need, which is when they come in and, you know, they need to have services and whatnot. So, anyway, so he called me in for an interview. Of course, as soon as the interview was over, I got the job. So I went out and I got my gear because I got to wear black all the time. And I would always, so I got a couple black suits and things like that, but I would always wear like bright colors and things like that because, you know, I don't want to be all in black looking like the Grim Reaper when you're coming to talk to me about your family, right? So, anyway, so I was learning that process and, getting my license in Georgia and different things for Georgia Memorial. Hey guys in Georgia, I love you. If you go by Georgia Memorial, I love it. It was great. The mausoleum is amazing there. But I loved it, right? And so anyway, so I had families I was working with that I'm still friends with till this day. Families that I helped and everything else that would come in, and that you do it on a rotation basis. So the family service counselor that's up for that day, anybody that walked in the door needing services for that day, then that was your family. So I got a couple of families that I was working with. I was learning the gardens in the cemetery. I was learning about the funeral arrangements because we had an on-site funeral home at that one, whereas the one in Richmond, Virginia, we had a crematory but no funeral home. So, and then, another thing about it is that if you go to a funeral home, um, the funeral director or family service counselor that you work with them, they can do everything for the services except, like for the caskets or the urns, and then for the ceremony and the actual opening and closing and stuff like that. So the funeral director, they can sell you the casket and the funeral services, right? But the cemetery, if you want to have plots, um, has to they have to be purchased through the cemetery, mausoleums, niches, everything else, ground interment and cremations, right? So all that gets handled, and the memorials and the markers from the cemetery. So I was, on my groove and, loving helping my families and everything else and being able to support them, on the day of the internment and everything else. And, just give them some, you know, compassion and support, and letting them know, your loved one isn't present in that body anymore, so that was the mental thing that a lot of people had to get around because they were like, oh my god, their body's going in the ground and I'm never going to see them again and everything else. And it was so beautiful because I got to explain to them and let them know, no, your loved one is right here, standing right next to you right now. They're not in in that place and they're not suffering and they love you. And any messages that they were giving me to give to the family, I would give it to them and things like that. And then, in the back of my mind, I'm like, they're going to think I'm crazy, this crazy lady. She's just trying to, say whatever, because, she works for the funeral home or whatever. But I genuinely had a love and compassion for all of my families that I worked with. Um, the hardest one that I broke down after was a baby that we had services for, and it was an in ground burial and things like that. And you know, um, I went out and I supported the family. The grandma, she was so distraught. She was trying to jump in in the plot. And so I was like holding on to her and I held her as tight as I could, because I was like, oh my God, I'm a mom too. So I know exactly what you're going through and I'm going to do for you everything that I would want somebody to do for me. Here we go. Anyway, so I held it together for the whole funeral. I was a standing pillar of, support and everything else. And the service was going on for hours. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to be out here until, mom, dad, family, everything are okay, as best as you can be. But the minute I got back to the office, I lost it. I lost it all. I let it all out for everything that I had been holding back, because I can't imagine losing my little baby and then seeing that little small. Anyway, I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to apologize for getting emotional because I have feelings and I have compassion for people. And that's one of the reasons I got so upset in that job. Okay, breathe, money, breathe. So I was continuing to do my training and whatnot, and the regional manager came. And so it was my time to test to go out, actually mark a spot next to a husband that had previously passed away. And it was my first time having to go put the flags out so that the ground crew knew which place to open up for the services. Okay. So, anyway, so I go out there, I do all my marking, and I'm like so nervous because it's the first one I'm doing all on my own and I'm not really having any training or support or anything or whatnot, right? So, anyway, so I come back to the office and the regional manager and the gal that was training me, they're like, okay, did you do it? And I go, yeah, but I don't know how well, if I did it right, can you come out and check it? They said, oh yeah, we're going to come out and check it. And so anyway, so we get out there and then they check it and everything else. And I had marked the wrong spot. So the gal that was my mentor and training me and whatnot, she, she never really trained me. She was like, here's how you do it. Go out and kind of figure it out, and learn it on your own. So with the regional manager there and, the two of us, and then so anyway, so we get back in the car and I was like, just to let you know, the regional manager, that's the first time I've ever gone out to even mark a plot, right? I said, I haven't had any training. Anything that I have done uh, today was what I basically learned on myself. I didn't know that the husband and wife are, laid to rest just like they were in the ceremony, with the, what is it, the husband on the left and the wife on the right. That's how they, if you do burial side by side, that's how they bury you, with your spouse next to you as you were when you first stood up for matrimony, right? So I told him, I was like, I didn't have any training and things like that. I basically had to go out and on my own. And then I'm overwhelmed because, it's a federal offense if you open up the wrong spot. and bury somebody in the wrong spot. And they made sure they went over that in training, like over and over and over again, to let us know about that, right? So while I was in the car and I was explaining this to him, then because they were in the front seat, I was in the back seat. And so he turns and looks at the gal that was training me, and he was like, well, then this falls back on you because you were the one that was supposed to train her and everything else. And if we would have had to open up the wrong spot, it would have been on your hands. And so, because I'm back there in the back seat just tearing myself up because I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? I almost had them open up the wrong grave. I would have had to call their son and tell him everything that was going on. I missed a comment, Julie, but I'll go back and check it. And so I'm going through it, right? Because I was like, I want to make sure that they have the best experience that they have. I don't want to be going out there half-assed without knowing what I'm doing or anything else like that, right? So anyway, so we come back to the office, and then my mentor goes back in the office. And then so I'm standing outside and I'm getting emotional, with my regional manager. And I said, look, I said, I love this job. I love families. I came back to this industry because I loved working with families and different things like that. I came back to At Need because I want to help people. And I said, if I can't be properly trained, then that's not fair to me or the families that I'm working with, because I'm not going to be able to do what it is that I need to do to make sure that they are okay emotionally, spiritually, physically while they're in my care. They're my family. As soon as you walk in the door and I'm assigned to you as your family service counselor, I'm there from the beginning to the end and after. So I said, it's not fair to me and it's not fair to the families. And then I turned and walked into the office and had to go to the garage and, gather myself together. So the thing that really upset me about the cemetery and funeral industry was how headhunter they were with families on the worst day of their lives. So whenever there would be a service or anything else, I was supposed to make sure that everybody had my business card. And then in between conversations or in between going from the funeral service inside the chapel, maybe out to the graveside service or the mausoleum or whatever, then I was supposed to be, going over to family members and things like that and saying, you know, hey, I'd like to meet with you afterwards for a few minutes if you don't mind. And, go back. And then after everything, I'm supposed to go back and make appointments because all the people are thinking about death right now because they just experienced the death experience, correct, of a loved one and everything else. And I was like, you guys are a bunch of vultures. You are taking advantage of people on the worst day of their lives. I cannot tell you how many families came in and there were arguments because maybe the decedent didn't have plans and left one of the family members in charge that may not have been the oldest one in one case that I work with and everything else. She was trying to do the best she could to make the decisions that she thought were best for her mother and everything else. And then the family flies in and is like, why did you do this? And why did you do that? And why did you do? So it's like I've seen it all because we're not in our right minds whenever we have a death experience, right? So to have to go in and talk to somebody about, well, what did you think that they wanted? What were they like? That's just stirring up the emotions, right? So I saw how they took advantage of people. I saw that when families couldn't afford to pay for the services, like I stated earlier, if you don't have the money for all of the services, that's the opening and closing, that make sure that if it's going to be internment into the ground, that you have your opening and closing, you got your casket, you got the vault, and all the other things that go with it. And then they would turn to the family and say, you know, well, did you have life insurance? And I would be like, that's their money. Life insurance is for the people after the family member or loved one has passed away, for them to continue on until they replace that income, or they, can get their life in order because they no longer have that person right? They have that person in their lives. So they would be filing the, life insurance and having to pay, tens of thousands of dollars. And then what? You know, you've had this big expensive service and now you have nothing on top of not having your loved one. I was like, I can't stand behind a company that does this to people, you know? You would think it would be because I got freaked out in the cemetery and I saw ghosts in the funeral home and things like that. I never saw anything. I always heard stuff, but I never saw anything. But it didn't bother me because, I don't fear death. I don't fear that experience because I've, dealt with the industry and things like that. So I had to get out. And then after I got out, I took what I learned and I started helping my families and everything else like that, giving them information on how they could save money and different things like that. So, did you know that if you purchase funeral and cemetery arrangements in one state and then you move to another state, did you know that you can transfer that like value over to another cemetery if you've moved to another state, another county, or anything else? If you want to move and not be, interned or cremated or left in a certain garden when you originally made your final arrangements, you can transfer it for free. They won't tell you that. Did you know that you have 2 years of counseling available to you for grief counseling and any other counseling that may be coming up because you've been triggered by a death in the family? 2 years free. Every family member has it for 2 years for free. And I would make sure that I was giving out those. I made sure I told my families everything. Did you know that you don't have to buy the memorial and the marker from the cemetery companies that are going to charge you astronomical amounts or anything else? You can order them off of Amazon. You'll have to pay for the installation. Like the cemetery may say, oh well, we don't want to be responsible for the installation because of insurance purposes or anything else like that. But you can have an outside company do a foot marker, a monument, or whatever, and pay for it a lot less. Like these granite companies, there was always a granite company that was right by the cemetery. If there wasn't one across the street, there was one really close by. Also, if you're looking for ground interment, you can buy your casket online. There's all kinds of caskets online and whatever, and you don't have to pay thousands of dollars, you know, for something because you're in an emotional state and, grieving. And so you want to give your loved one the best final, you know, celebration, life celebration that you can. But it's going to go into a vault and then they're going to be lowered down into the space. And, I don't want you to be broke. I don't want you to have additional problems afterwards. It is. Everything is such a racket. And I found out about that. And so, anyway, so let me give you some tips. Because afterwards, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to be an advocate and I'm going to tell on your shit because I'm going to help these families and I'm going to educate them because nobody wants to be educated about the death process and everything else because none of us want to face it, until you have to face it, which is normal and natural in the United States of, America. But yeah, so if you don't have a final resting place already arranged, right? And you have an at need service. They have spots available for those that are considered indigent. I think that's what it's called. Like if you were homeless or you had no family and you have no one there, or you can't afford a space or anything else like that. They have them available in the cemetery. They're not going to tell you about it unless you know, or unless you have a compassionate, family service counselor. And so I took it upon myself. I would start educating people about it. Also, um, there's lots of plots and everything for sale online. Um, I would help families. I would contact them, and they were like, "Look, we don't have a space. We can't afford it." Da, 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 da. And I was like, okay, well, I know of a family that has extra spots that they bought for their family and they're deciding to get rid of it. And you don't have to pay full retail price for that. Also, did you know that you're only paying for the rights to be buried there? You don't own the land. The spot that you're going in, it's not your land. You're just paying for the rights to be buried there. And you have to have a vault and you have to have a casket. You have to have opening and closing. You do not have to have a memorial or a marker, but most people want to so that they can have their loved ones memorialized. But you don't have to buy it all right away. You can take your time and make payments on it over time or whatever. You know. So anyway, so then I started being an advocate and everything, and I was like, I want to open a business to where I can go in and advocate for families, right? Because I'm not emotionally attached to the circumstances, right? So when I go in and help, by finding out, I would go meet with the this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I want to be able to go meet with the family, find out what it is, hopefully before the death occurs, and find out, what do you want? What do you need? What do find out everything that they want, right? And so then that way, get a power of attorney. I go in and meet with the family service counselor at the funeral home, cemetery, or wherever. You can't make me emotionally spend because I'm not the family member that's in distraught and milk all of their pockets, right? Plus, there's other people like what I was saying that have plots available that they want to get rid of. They'll sell it to you. You can look up in the history on in the records of the cemetery, every plot and space that they sell, there's a contract and it says how much they paid for that spot at that time. So most people that are wanting to sell their cemetery plots is because they don't know you can transfer it, right? Or they don't know that, hey, my parents bought this plot for me and I don't want to be buried, right? I want to be cremated. Well, did you know that a burial spot can hold multiple cremations in that same spot? All you have to do is pay for the opening and closing each time something happens. So you don't have to get rid of the spot unless you just, plain and simple don't want to go into the ground at all. And most people that are doing cremation service, that's exactly what they want. So anyway, in the advocacies, I would give everybody tips and information that so the cemetery and the funeral home can't gouge you on the worst day of your life and take all your life insurance. You know, so I want to do that. There's only one other company that's in business right now, and so I have a playlist on my channel, and it's called the Final Ripoff. I highly recommend that if you all don't have arrangements, just because you make arrangements doesn't mean you're going to die, right? But no one wants to leave that responsibility to their loved ones on the worst day of their life. By the way, that's one of the selling topics that they taught us to use in the family service counselor when we're going out for pre-need. But we were supposed to approach the husband and say, and no loving husband would want his wife to have to make all those arrangements on the worst day of their life. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Jones? Right? And right in front of his wife. So he's already trapped and up against the wall because if he says anything else but no, I don't want my wife going through that, then they're going to have a conversation after I leave, right? So I just want you all to, take care of your future arrangements, Even if you go down to your local cemetery or funeral home, they have a family planning guide of some kind where you can write down everything that you want, even if you don't prepay for it. You can write down, this is what I want, you know, and all this stuff. And then I used to tell my families, right, let's fill it out together, right? So I would fill it out together with the family and we would get as much as we could get done. It's pertinent information like your medical information, your contacts, your passwords for your computer, your favorite colors. What do you want to do? What kind of life did you have? Da, 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 da. Who do you want making the arrangements? And different things like that. And I was like, we don't have to do all of this right now. Let's just get started. And then I would tell the families, get a gallon size, because ours were big. Ours were 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 14, whatever. They were the big size, like a sheet of paper. And so anyway, I would be like, just start it, and put in the most important information now in case you never get back to it. Get a gallon size Ziploc bag, put it in there, close it up, and throw it in your freezer. That way, if you flood, fire, or any natural disasters or anything like that, it's in there, it's safe, whatnot. And then whoever is in charge, or whatever that you've decided that you want to make arrangements, let all your family know. If anything happens to me, my final arrangements and what I want are in the freezer in a Ziploc bag, you know. But don't leave your family in that situation because I've seen it too many times with other family members and it just tears them apart. They're not able to grieve, they're not able to mourn, because they're trying to do what's best in what they think you wanted because they never know. They never knew because we never took the time to have those conversations. I had the conversation after I worked in a funeral and cemetery home. Oh, I had conversations with all of my offspring. I had conversations with my parents. I had conversations with my relatives and everything else, and I was just like, please do this for yourself, because I've seen how it just tears family apart and it's crazy and it's unnecessary, you know? So that's my cemetery job and funeral home. So if you have any questions about final arrangements, about making final arrangements, about transferring properties over, if you have arrangements in one state and you've moved and you would like to transfer them, if you would like to find out about possible veterans benefits, because veterans have free interment service and everything else available to them, free memorial, free marker, and the spouses as well. So if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to, get in the comments and we're almost at an hour. I didn't think they would let me go live for this long, because it's really a lot of information and I didn't even cover it all, you know because there's only so much people can take. But I'm sure everybody has probably clicked off by now because they thought for sure I had a ghost experience or a paranormal experience. My experiences with the paranormal didn't happen in the cemetery. They happened in Savannah, Georgia at Forsyth Park. That's another story. When I went and did ghost busting, um, there's a whole story about that and how that happened and led up to it. So we'll just save that up for story time next time. And so thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your support. I'm already accumulatively in my life of my channel, I'm at over 4,000 watch hours. And then since I've revamped my channel again, uh, I'm at 3,000. So I should be able to. Bye, Cody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your wonderful comment on today's video too. I really appreciate it. And so anyway, what was I saying? I forgot. Anyway, I love you all. You guys got any questions for me now before we go? Do you guys still want to hang out and shoot the shit? you know. Let's go. Let's see. Let me go back and read your message, Julie. Thanks for sharing. All right, Jen. Good night. I love you. Thank you for coming and supporting. All right, Cody. It's so easy to do when we are alive and so difficult for others when we are gone. That is so true. Yes, Jen, you and I need to talk. And send me an email, Jen, if you haven't left already, and send me an email at purelifeenterprisellc@gmail.com. It's in my description of my videos and on my channel, so we can exchange phone numbers and shoot shit. Okay, I love you. Let me see. Go back to the messages. I wanted to see what Julie said. Yeah, people tend to avoid these conversations. I know, it's so important. Yeah. Yeah, I think I have to research though and get my stuff going. I've got stuff on my brain, and that would be an avenue that I would love to take this channel into in helping people. Okay, here's Cody's. I thought it was Julia's. I'm sure your West Coast mindset was comforting to the East Coast mindset. Both are great, but very different from each other. I also lived in Richmond. You did, Cody? Oh, shoot, I lost the comments. You also lived in Richmond. I loved Richmond, Virginia. The history when I would be walking on the cobblestone streets downtown. Um, It was amazing. It was amazing. And I lived on this corner apartment that my my block faced, like the end of the street. So I had a block of apartments and houses on this side and a block of apartments and houses on this side, and my front porch sat out right there. So it was like 227, and then there was a little corner store, like right kitty corner. I mean, I could throw a rock at it. And so my roommate and I, we would sit out there in Virginia, and it was in Carytown, right? Which was totally like California areas of North Park and stuff like that I lived in. So I loved it. And I'd say, come on, let's go sit on the porch like 227 and talk about the neighbors and stuff that we were watching and everything. It was amazing. I loved it. I've been a lot of places and had a lot of interesting jobs. And so I just hope that my life experiences can help shed some light to you guys and help you and, give you some encouragement and everything else. And then for nothing else, I'm definitely going to be, lived at Saco. Oh, yeah, I went out down there. And so I hope you continue to follow me and watch my videos and stuff like that because I only have the best intentions. I'm always going to be real. I'm always going to talk about whatever spirit puts on my heart to talk about. And I'm always going to stand up for humanity. I'm an Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius. We're in the Aquarius age. Pluto's in Aquarius. We're in the age of Aquarius. The whole world is changing. We're getting out of the hell control and bottom feeders and strife and competition and division and all that stuff. And we're moving. Some of us are already there and existing in the love vibration and peace and power and positivity and community and things like that. And so I'm over there. So if I have to pop in and check some people with my red marker or whatever, I'm going to do it. Fuck 'em. So I love you guys. I'm going to go ahead and end this live if you guys don't have any more questions. Do you have any more questions? Or anything you want to say or anything like that? Because I know it's late for Jen and those of you on the East Coast because let's see, 8. So 9 o'clock, 10, 11, 12. It's the witching hour. All right, you guys. I love you. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of story time about me and my jobs, and I hope I gave you some helpful tips so that if you need to reach out, my information is in my every video description. It's in my channel description on how you can get a hold of me on Facebook, on my email, or any of those other things. So I love you all. Thank you for spending your time with me. I really appreciate it. I love getting to know my community because that's what we're building is community. And so that being said, I love you all. Have a good night. Sleep with the angels and dream big. Bye. Bye. Love you.